This happened about 3 months ago, and I haven't been back to that gym since. My name is Brandon, and I'm a 28-year-old physical therapist living in Tampa. I've always been into fitness. It's kind of part of my job to stay in shape and lead by example for my patients. I've had a membership at LA Fitness for about 2 years now. It's close to my apartment, open 24 hours, and usually pretty empty late at night, which is when I prefer to work out. I work long shifts at the clinic, sometimes until 8 or 9 at night. By the time I get home, change, and head to the gym, it's usually around 10 or 10:30. Most people think that's too late to work out, but I like it. The gym is quiet, no waiting for equipment, no crowds, just me and maybe a handful of other night owls doing their thing. This particular night was a Tuesday in late August. I'd had a really stressful day at work. One of my patients had been making great progress and then re-injured themselves doing something stupid at home. It was frustrating. I needed to blow off some steam. So I headed to the gym around 11. When I got there, the parking lot was almost empty. Maybe 4 or 5 cars total. That wasn't unusual for this time of night. I parked near the entrance, grabbed my gym bag, and headed inside. I scanned my membership card at the front desk. There was one employee working, a young guy probably in his early 20s. He barely looked up from his phone. Just nodded at me as I walked past. I went to the locker room and changed into my workout clothes. When I came back out, I did a quick scan of the gym floor. There were only 3 other people there. One guy on the treadmill wearing headphones and staring at the TV. Another guy doing bench press in the free weight area. And someone on the rowing machine in the back corner. All guys. All focused on their own workouts. I started with some stretching, then moved to the leg press machine. I put on my headphones and started my workout playlist. For the first 30 minutes or so, everything was normal. I cycled through my usual leg routine. Leg press, squats, lunges, calf raises. I was in the zone, not really paying attention to anyone else. Around 11:45, I finished my leg workout and moved to the upper body section. That's when I noticed something odd. The guy who had been on the rowing machine was now on an elliptical. But he wasn't actually using it. He was just standing on it, not moving, looking around the gym. When he noticed me looking at him, he started moving again, slowly, like he was pretending to work out. I shrugged it off and started doing some dumbbell exercises, but I couldn't shake this weird feeling. I glanced over at the guy again a few minutes later. He'd moved to a different machine, a lat pull-down machine. But again, he wasn't really using it. He was just sitting there, hands on the bar, not pulling, just sitting and looking around. The other 2 guys who had been in the gym when I arrived were gone now. I hadn't noticed them leave, but the treadmill and bench press area were empty. It was just me and this guy, and the employee at the front desk. I tried to focus on my workout, but I kept catching this guy in my peripheral vision. Every time I moved to a new area, he'd move too, not immediately. He'd wait a few minutes, but he was definitely following me around the gym. When I went to the cable machine area, he moved to a machine nearby. When I went to the pull-up bars, he moved to the dip station right next to them. At first, I thought maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe he just happened to have a similar workout routine. But then I noticed he was never actually completing any exercises. He'd do like 2 or 3 reps of something, then stop and just stand there, watching, waiting. My heart started beating faster, and it wasn't from the workout. I pulled out my phone and pretended to check a message, but I was actually opening my camera. I switched it to selfie mode so I could see behind me without turning around. The guy was standing about 15 feet away, next to a weight rack. Just standing there, staring directly at me. I decided to test something. I walked toward the locker room like I was going to get something from my bag. I watched on my phone camera as the guy immediately started following me. He kept a distance, but he was definitely trailing me. I stopped before reaching the locker room and turned around. He stopped too and pretended to adjust his shoe. That's when I knew for sure. This wasn't a coincidence. This guy was following me, watching me. For what purpose, I had no idea, but every instinct I had was telling me to get out of there. I walked back toward the main gym area, and the guy followed. I went to the front desk where the employee was still sitting, scrolling through his phone. I asked the employee if he'd noticed the guy in the red shirt acting weird. He looked up, confused, and asked what I meant. I explained that the guy had been following me around the gym for the past 20 minutes. The employee looked out at the gym floor and said he hadn't noticed anything. Said the guy had checked in like an hour ago and seemed normal. I asked if he could maybe keep an eye on the situation. The employee said sure, but he seemed more annoyed than concerned, like I was bothering him over nothing. I went back to the gym floor, feeling only slightly better, knowing the employee was at least aware now. I decided to cut my workout short. I just wanted to finish up and leave. I went to the bench press area to do one last set. I lay down on the bench and started my set. I was halfway through when I saw the guy in the red shirt appear above me. He was standing at the head of the bench, right where a spotter would stand. I nearly dropped the bar. I racked it quickly and sat up, my heart pounding. The guy smiled at me and asked if I needed a spot. I said, no, I was done. He said it looked like I had more in me, that I should do another set. The way he said it, it wasn't friendly, it was pushy, aggressive, almost. I stood up and said I was finished for the night. I started to walk away, but he followed me. He asked where I was going. Said we could work out together, said it would be fun. I told him no thanks and kept walking toward the locker room. He was right behind me. I stopped and turned around, asked him directly why he was following me. He acted surprised, said he wasn't following me, said he was just trying to be friendly, make a gym buddy. But his eyes were cold, there was no friendliness there, just something wrong, something off. I told him to leave me alone and walked quickly to the locker room. My hands were shaking as I opened my locker and grabbed my stuff. I didn't even bother changing out of my workout clothes. I just threw my regular clothes in my bag and headed for the exit. The guy in the red shirt was standing near the locker room entrance, watching me leave. I went to the front desk and told the employee I was leaving and that the guy had approached me aggressively. The employee finally looked concerned. He asked if I wanted him to say something to the guy. I said yes, and I was also going to wait in my car for a few minutes to make sure the guy didn't follow me to the parking lot. The employee said he'd go talk to him. I watched through the glass doors as the employee walked over to the guy in the red shirt. They talked for maybe 30 seconds. The guy shrugged and walked away, heading toward the locker room. The employee came back and said he'd told the guy to leave me alone. Said if there were any more problems, he'd cancel the guy's membership. I thanked him and walked out to my car. I got in, locked the doors immediately, and just sat there for a minute trying to calm down. I watched the gym entrance, waiting to see if the guy would come out. After about 5 minutes, he did. He walked out of the gym, still in his workout clothes, carrying a small bag. He didn't head toward any of the cars in the parking lot. Instead, he walked to the side of the building and just stood there, in the shadows, where I couldn't see him clearly unless I was really looking. My stomach dropped. Why would he go stand there? Was he waiting for me to leave so he could follow me? I immediately called 911, explained the situation, that someone at the gym had been following me, acting threatening, and was now standing in the shadows outside the building. The dispatcher said they'd send an officer to check it out. They told me to stay in my car with the doors locked. I kept my eyes on the spot where the guy was standing. Every few seconds I'd see movement. He was still there, just standing, watching the parking lot, watching my car. About 8 minutes later, a police car pulled into the lot. As soon as the lights appeared, the guy took off running. He ran behind the building toward a residential area that backed up to the gym property. The officer got out and came over to my car. I rolled down my window and explained everything. The officer called for backup and they searched the area behind the gym. They didn't find the guy, but they found something else. A backpack hidden in the bushes near the back fence. Inside were a knife, zip ties, and a pair of gloves. The officer came back and told me what they'd found. He said they were going to review the gym's security footage and try to identify the guy. He asked if I could come to the station the next day to give a full statement and look at the footage. I said yes. He also recommended I not return to that gym, at least not alone or at night. I drove home, constantly checking my mirrors to make sure no one was following me. When I got to my apartment, I parked in the garage instead of my usual spot on the street. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound made me jump. The next day, I went to the police station. They showed me the security footage from the gym. The guy had checked in using a membership card, but the name on the account was fake. The address was fake. Everything was fake. He'd clearly created the account with false information just to get access to the gym. The footage showed him arriving at the gym about 10 minutes before I did. He'd gone to the locker room, changed, and then just stood near the entrance to the gym floor, waiting. When I walked in, he'd watched me go to the locker room, and then he'd started his routine of following me around. The scariest part was what the footage showed after I'd left. After the police had arrived and he'd run, he'd come back. About 30 minutes later, he'd walked through the parking lot, looking at cars. He'd stopped at my car, tried the door handle, walked around it, looked in the windows. Then he'd left again. The police said they were treating this as stalking and attempted assault. The items found in the backpack suggested he'd been planning to attack someone. They believed I'd been specifically targeted, but they weren't sure why. Maybe because I was alone. Maybe because I was a regular and he'd been watching me for a while. They didn't know. They circulated the security footage to other LA fitness locations in the area. Turned out, this guy had been kicked out of 2 other locations for similar behavior, following women around the gym, making them uncomfortable. But he'd never been arrested because he'd always left before the police arrived. I canceled my membership at that LA Fitness. I joined a different gym, one that's busy even at night. I also changed my workout schedule. I go in the mornings now before work, when there are lots of people around. I hate that I had to change my routine because of this, but I'd rather be inconvenienced than dead. My friend Eric said I overreacted, that the guy was probably just socially awkward and didn't realize he was being creepy. But Eric wasn't there. He didn't see the look in that guy's eyes. He didn't see him standing in the shadows outside. He doesn't know about the knife and zip ties in the backpack. I think about that night constantly. I think about what would have happened if I'd gone into the locker room to change instead of leaving in my workout clothes. Would he have followed me in there? Would he have cornered me where there were no cameras? I think about what would have happened if I'd worked out just 30 minutes later and been the only person in the gym besides him. The police never caught him. They said he's probably moved to a different area, using a different fake name, targeting people at different gyms. They warned other fitness centers in the region, but there's only so much they can do. I'm telling you this because gyms, especially 24-hour gyms, can be dangerous. They're usually understaffed at night. There are lots of isolated areas, locker rooms, stairwells, parking lots. and people are distracted, focused on their workouts, headphones in, not paying attention to their surroundings. If you work out at night, go with a friend. If you have to go alone, stay in well-lit areas. Don't use headphones, or at least keep one ear free so you can hear what's around you. And if someone's making you uncomfortable, trust that feeling. Tell the staff, call the police if you need to. Don't worry about seeming paranoid or dramatic. I'd rather be called paranoid than be another crime statistic. I learned that lesson at an LA Fitness on a Tuesday night in August, and I'll never forget it. Stay safe out there, and pay attention to who's around you. This happened about 2 months ago, and it's completely changed how I feel about being alone in gym facilities. My name is Melissa, and I'm a 33-year-old marketing manager living in Dallas. I've been a member of LA Fitness for about 4 years now. I'm not someone who's super into fitness, but I try to go a few times a week just to stay healthy. My favorite thing about the gym is actually the steam room. After a long day at work, sitting in there for 10 or 15 minutes is the most relaxing part of my routine. The LA Fitness I go to is in a pretty busy area, lots of shopping centers and restaurants nearby. During peak hours, the place is packed, but I usually go around 7 or 8 at night on weekdays, after the dinner rush but before it gets too late. At that time, it's busy enough that there are people around, but not so crowded that you're waiting for equipment. This particular night was a Thursday in early September. I'd had a really long day at work. Back-to-back meetings, a presentation that didn't go well, and my boss breathing down my neck about a project deadline. By the time I left the office, I was exhausted and stressed. I changed into my gym clothes in my car and headed inside. I did my usual routine, 30 minutes on the elliptical, some light weight training, nothing too intense. The whole time, I was just looking forward to sitting in the steam room and decompressing. Around 8:30, I finished my workout and headed to the women's locker room. The locker room was moderately busy, a few women getting changed, a couple in the shower area. I grabbed my towel and headed toward the back where the steam room was located. At this LA Fitness, the steam room is in a separate alcove past the showers. It's kind of tucked away, which I always liked because it felt more private and peaceful. I opened the door to the steam room and was immediately hit with that wall of hot, humid air. The room was empty, which was perfect. I went in, closed the door behind me, and sat down on the top bench. The steam was thick, and within seconds I could feel myself starting to relax. I closed my eyes and just focused on breathing. I'd been in there for maybe 5 minutes when I heard the door open. I opened my eyes and saw another woman come in through the steam. She was younger, maybe mid-20s, wearing a towel. She sat down on the lower bench on the opposite side of the room. We didn't make eye contact or acknowledge each other, which was normal. People in steam rooms usually just want to be left alone. A few more minutes passed. The steam was getting thicker, making it harder to see across the room. I could only make out the vague shape of the other woman sitting there. I closed my eyes again and tried to relax. Then I heard something that made me open my eyes. Whispering. Very quiet, barely audible over the hiss of the steam. I looked toward where the other woman was sitting. I couldn't see her clearly through the steam, but I could hear her. She was whispering something. I couldn't make out the words. I figured she was maybe on the phone, even though that was against gym rules. Some people do it anyway. I tried to ignore it and closed my eyes again. But the whispering continued, and it was getting louder, or closer. I couldn't tell which. I opened my eyes and wiped the condensation off my face. Through the steam, I could see the woman had moved. She wasn't sitting on the lower bench anymore. She was standing. Just standing in the middle of the steam room, facing my direction. Still whispering. A chill ran down my spine despite the heat. I asked if she was okay. She didn't respond, just kept whispering. I still couldn't understand what she was saying. I sat up straighter, my heart starting to beat faster. Something about this felt very wrong. I decided to leave. I stood up and started moving toward the door. That's when the woman moved too. She took a step toward me, then another. She was walking in my direction, still whispering, getting closer. I could start to make out some of the words now. She was saying something about coming with her and time to go. I said, "Excuse me, I need to get by." She didn't move out of the way. She just stood there between me and the door, blocking my path. I was about to push past her when she reached out and grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight, too tight. I pulled away and said, "Don't touch me." She smiled. At least, I think she smiled. Through the thick steam, it was hard to see her face clearly, but I could see her teeth. She said, in a voice that was no longer a whisper, "You can't leave yet. We're not done." Panic surged through me. I yanked my arm free and shoved past her, heading for the door. I grabbed the handle and pulled. The door didn't open. I pulled harder. It still didn't budge. It felt like something was blocking it from the outside. I started pounding on the door, yelling for help. Behind me, I could hear the woman laughing. Not a normal laugh. Something high-pitched and unsettling. I turned around, pressing my back against the door. She was closer now, maybe 6 feet away. Through the steam, I could see her more clearly. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her smile was too big. I yelled again for help. As loud as I could, I kept pounding on the door. The woman took another step toward me. She said, "No one can hear you. No one's coming." I pulled on the door handle again, desperately. This time, it opened. I nearly fell backward into the hallway. I stumbled out of the steam room and immediately saw why the door had been stuck. There was a mop handle wedged under the door handle from the outside. Someone had deliberately blocked the door. Someone had trapped me in there. My blood turned to ice. I looked around the hallway, but there was no one there. I ran toward the main locker room area, where I could hear voices and see other women. When I got there, I was breathing hard, my heart racing. A woman asked if I was okay. I tried to explain what had just happened, but I was so shaken that my words came out jumbled. Another woman offered to go back with me to check. I said okay, and 3 of us walked back toward the steam room. The woman from inside was gone. The steam room was empty, and the mop handle that had been wedged under the door was gone too. It was like nothing had happened. One of the women who'd come with me looked at me skeptically. She asked if I was sure someone had blocked the door. I said yes, I'd seen it. She looked around the hallway but didn't see any mop or anything that could have been used. She suggested maybe I'd imagined it, that the steam and heat had made me lightheaded. But I knew what I'd seen. I knew what I'd felt. That woman had grabbed my arm. Someone had blocked that door. I went to the front desk and asked to speak to a manager. The employee at the desk called someone, and a manager came out a few minutes later, a woman in her 40s named Patricia. I explained everything. About the woman in the steam room, about her blocking my path, about the door being wedged shut. Patricia looked concerned but also confused. She said she'd review the security footage and check the steam room. She asked me to wait. I sat in the lobby, still in my towel, trying to calm down. About 10 minutes later, Patricia came back. She said she'd reviewed the footage from the cameras in the locker room hallway. According to the footage, I'd been the only person to enter the steam room in the past 30 minutes. No one else had gone in or come out. I insisted that couldn't be right. There had been another woman in there. Patricia said the cameras didn't lie. She showed me the footage on her phone. It clearly showed me walking down the hallway and entering the steam room at 8:36. Then, at 8:49, it showed me bursting out, looking panicked. No one else appeared in the footage. But then, Patricia pointed something out. At 8:44, there was a brief moment where the camera feed glitched. The screen went black for maybe 3 seconds, then came back. During those 3 seconds, someone could have theoretically entered or exited without being recorded. But Patricia said that was unlikely, and the glitch was probably just a technical issue. I asked about the mop handle. Patricia said she'd checked the hallway and didn't find anything, but she did notice that a mop was missing from the janitor's closet nearby. It should have been there, but wasn't. She said she'd look into it. Patricia offered to let me use her office to get changed and collect myself. She also said she'd have someone check the entire locker room and steam room to make sure no one was hiding anywhere. I thanked her and went to change. My hands were still shaking. While I was getting dressed, I got a text from an unknown number. It said, "You shouldn't have left." We weren't finished. My heart stopped. I showed the text to Patricia. She immediately said we should call the police. I agreed. 2 officers arrived about 15 minutes later. I showed them the text and explained everything that had happened. They took my phone to try to trace the number. They also reviewed the security footage with Patricia. One officer pointed out something I hadn't noticed before. In the footage, right before I entered the steam room, you could see someone's shadow on the wall, like someone was standing just out of frame. But when the camera angle shifted, there was no one there. The officers searched the entire locker room, including the steam room, showers, bathroom stalls, and storage areas. They didn't find anyone. But in the steam room, they did find something. Scratched into the wooden bench was a message. It said, "She's always watching." The officer asked if that had been there before. I said I'd never noticed it, but I also admitted I'd never looked that closely at the benches. They took photos of everything. The scratched message, the missing mop, the hallway where the door handle had supposedly been wedged. They tried to trace the text message but said it came from a burner phone app. Basically untraceable. The police told me to be careful. Change my routines. Vary when I went to the gym. Keep an eye out for anyone following me. They said they'd increase patrols in the area and would follow up if they found anything. I canceled my membership the next day. I couldn't go back there. Every time I thought about that steam room, about that woman's face through the steam, about the door being blocked, I felt sick. Patricia understood and processed my cancellation without any pushback. But here's what really messed me up. 3 days later, I got another text from the same unknown number. It said, "New gym." Same eyes. How did they know I'd switched gyms? Had they been following me? I called the police immediately, and they said they'd look into it, but again, there wasn't much they could do with an untraceable number. I stopped going to gyms altogether for a while. Started working out at home. I also got a security system installed in my apartment. Started being hyper-aware of anyone following me or watching me. My best friend Jenna said I was letting fear control my life. Maybe she was right. But I'd rather be overcautious than dead. I still don't know who that woman in the steam room was. If she was even real. The security footage showed no one else entering, but I felt her grab my arm. I saw her face. I heard her voice. And someone sent me those texts. Someone blocked that door. Those things were real. The police theory was that someone had been stalking me for a while. That they'd figured out my routine at the gym and had been waiting for the right moment to corner me somewhere isolated. The steam room was perfect because it's private, hard to see in, and people often go in alone. The camera glitch could have been caused by someone who knew how to hack or disrupt the security system. Or it could have been a genuine technical issue that gave someone a few seconds to slip by unnoticed. Either way, someone was in that steam room with me. Someone who wanted to scare me, or hurt me, or worse. I moved apartments 2 months later, got a place in a different part of Dallas, started completely new routines, different grocery store, different coffee shop, different everything. I don't know if I was still being followed or watched. I don't know if those texts were just someone messing with me or an actual threat. But I wasn't taking any chances. I'm telling you this because places like gym locker rooms and steam rooms can be incredibly dangerous. They're isolated, often not covered well by security cameras, easy for someone to trap you in. And people are vulnerable there, in towels, without phones, without easy access to help. If you use gym facilities, especially ones like steam rooms or saunas, never go in alone if you can help it. Tell someone where you're going. Check that the door opens easily before you settle in. And if anyone makes you uncomfortable, leave immediately. Don't worry about being rude. Don't second-guess yourself. I hesitated when that woman first started acting weird. I should have left the moment she started whispering. But I didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want to overreact. That hesitation almost cost me everything. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I learned that the hard way in a steam room at an LA Fitness on a Thursday night in September. And I'll carry that lesson with me forever. Stay safe. Stay aware. And never let your guard down, even in places that should feel safe. Retry.